Hey guys, Coach Logan here, this time with part 2 of my video series on the elements of chess. And in this video I want to talk about material. Okay, material just means who has more points, right? If one side's up a pawn, then they have a material advantage. This is an important factor because in the long run in chess games, pieces tend to come off the board via trades, and then what seems like a small advantage, like an extra pawn, can actually become a big one by the time of the endgame. Right? It's kind of like chess gravity, something I've talked about before, but how does a game tend to unfold, right? Pieces tend to get traded in the same way that a ball tends to roll down a hill, right, and not just stay in place. So anyway, to illustrate how to use a material advantage, I'm going to show one of my games from a recent online tournament. So I was playing black here, and my opponent started with the move d4, which is a good move. I played knight f6, and then my opponent played bishop to g5. I played e6, and then he played e4. Okay, so we reached this position here. And here I played h6, attacking his bishop. And now he plays a move that I don't think was great. He played the move pawn to e5, which is a good attacking. I mean, it feels like a good attacking move for him. But the problem is it's going to lose a little bit of material. The main move in this position is for him to just take the knight. My queen takes, and then it's about an even position with chances for both sides. White has a pawn center, black has a bishop pair. Life goes on. But here he played pawn to e5, which attacks my knight. It makes some sense because it's attacking my knight, which is pinned, so I can't move my knight. But the problem is it loses a pawn. The way it loses a pawn is I just take this bishop here, which is what I did in the game. He takes my knight, so that's an even trade. We traded bishop for knight. I tend to like bishops, but it's about materially equal. And now, though, I can take this pawn on f6. Okay, I have a choice with how to take it. I could take it with my queen or with my pawn. I actually chose to take with my pawn, which might seem a little bit weird, but I kind of like bringing another pawn towards the center. So now I have a material advantage. It might seem small, but to me, a pawn matters a lot, right? I know now if I get to an endgame, and nothing else happens, my king doesn't come under too bad an attack, he doesn't get way ahead in development. If something like that happens, then I'm going to win that endgame because an extra pawn is a lot. Now, here, he played the rest of the game kind of interestingly, but I think we're going to see that a material advantage is a material advantage, and it just carries through. So let's see what happened. He played now pawn to c3, just kind of solidifying his center and opening up lines for his queen to get out. And now, so the first thing I would say is when you have a material advantage, you really, really want to prioritize simplification, okay? Taking what's a complicated position and trying to make it into something that we can easily understand. And the steps that I always talk about for simplification, okay, number one is my king safe. Okay, if your king is not safe, then the position is never simplified. And something can go wrong if your king is not safe. I don't care if you're up a rook. Okay, if your king is unsafe, things can go wrong. So that's number one. Number two, am I fully developed? Am I getting out all of my pieces, right? One big mistake I see kids make a lot is that they go up a piece in a game and then they just don't use it, right? They leave it, sitting on its starting square. It's like if you bought the winning lottery ticket, but then you just left it sitting on your shelf. It doesn't matter then, right? And then the third thing we should look to do is trade, right? Because trading is the best way to just simplify a position, right? You trade knight for knight, bishop for bishop. We get closer to an endgame where there's not too many complications and we're just winning, right? So the first factor I mentioned was king safety. I would say my king is not as safe as I would like him to be here. But I don't see a quick way to fix that, right? Like, I think that if I castle, in a weird way, I'm actually making my king less safe now. Because my king's side is a little bit exposed. My pawns have sort of moved on this side. So for the time being, I think I was just going to leave my king in the middle and maybe eventually go queen side. Now, am I fully developed? Definitely not. I'm not developed with any of my pieces. Only this rook is actually active right now because I've moved my h-pawn. But I need to get out pieces, so that's what I started doing next. So I played pawn to b6, getting ready to activate my bishop. He went bishop to d3, so he's activating. Bishop to b7, which is a good move because it comes with tempo, attacking this pawn on g2, which would trap the rook. So he played kind of a weird-looking move, but king f1. It makes some sense. He's defending g2. And it's not like I can really easily attack his king, so he doesn't mind giving up the right to castle there. I played knight c6, just getting pieces out. He played queen c2. Now, one thing about this knight is it's blocking my bishop, but I had a plan for it. I go knight to e7 now, which both opens my bishop back up and gives my king a little bit more protection. You know, this knight is covering squares like g6, f5, you know, etc., which could be used for his attack. He played knight to d2, so he's getting his pieces out in a harmonious way. It makes some sense. The only problem for him really is he's just down a pawn, right? All right, so I played f5. One thing I sense is this knight might be looking to hop into squares like e4, from which it'll be attacking f6, which could actually be checkmate, right? Like if I'm really, let's say I really, you know, I don't know how I would manage to fall asleep at the wheel this badly, but let's say I play something like c5. Now knight e4 is starting to get annoying, because if I'm not careful, like let's say I play d5 here, this would be a pretty embarrassing checkmate, and a pretty one for him, right? So I don't want any part of that. So I played f5 on the spot, and I said, let's just control these light squares in the center. This harmonizes well with my bishop on this long diagonal, and you know, slowly I'll just put a grip on the position by moving pawns up, you know, along the king side, along the center and the king side. He played rook e1, so he's getting his pieces out very quickly. So he's doing other factors in the game, you know, reasonably well. His king is very safe. We've talked about king safety in the last video. His development, which is something we're going to talk about in a future video, is not bad. He's got out, you know, a lot of his pieces. He's controlling, you know, his stake in the center. The only problem still is he's just down a pawn, and I don't think he has compensation for it. So I played bishop g7, just continuing my development. He plays knight f3, continuing his. Again, doing everything else right, but he's down a pawn. I played g4, attacking this knight, just grabbing more space and asking him where he would like to go. He played knight e5. I sense that I would like to start further expanding in the center with moves like pawn to d6 and maybe c5, but I don't love my king sitting on the same file as this rook. Now, it's probably safe there, but I just played this little prophylactic move, king to f8, which weirdly, I mean, I know I'm moving my king to the side rather than trying to castle it somewhere, but I felt like this was actually a pretty safe home on f8. The rook is sort of covering, you know, the king side that he could possibly attack me from, and now I feel a little bit more confident playing d6 without my king sitting on the semi-open e file there. He played knight to c4, which actually, you know, weirdly, this traps his own knight. His knight that's on e5 now has nowhere it can run back to. It can't go to g4, f3, d3. Now it can't go to c4. So now this added extra oomph to when I played d6. This knight has nowhere to retreat. So he's forced to sacrifice. So he plays knight takes f7 here. I played king takes f7, and again, now he's won back his pawn, but he's lost a knight, so my material advantage has expanded. I'm now up a knight. Now, I really like this position in terms of its educational value because, you know, in the last video we talked about king safety, and my king is not as safe as I would love it to be, right? I'm not castled, I don't have a great shield, but the problem for him is my king is not so bad, and he's down a knight. That's a lot. And I think we're seeing here the material disadvantage being more important in this position than the king safety disadvantage, right? So, like, you know, for instance, he could go crazy here and start sacrificing more material. Like, I don't know, he could play something like, I don't know. I mean, he could go absolutely, you know, hog wild and play like, you know, bishop takes f5. I think I'd probably just take with the knight. But let's just to demonstrate. Let's say I took with the pawn. Probably not best. He could keep sacrificing, and, you know, even something like queen takes f5. But actually, let's say I take this with the queen. Something like queen takes f5, he's getting checks in and attacks on my king, but the problem is it's just not enough, right? Like my king can just tuck on g8, my other rook will come over. I'll have enough safety to cover up, and then my extra pieces are going to really matter. Now, he didn't do that, but he played queen to b3, trying to open other lines on my king. I think he's trying here for some sort of trick with the knight. Like, I don't know, say like, let's just give me kind of a passive move. Let's say I play like a5 or something. I think he's trying to move the knight somewhere. Like, let's say knight takes b6. If I take, now his queen could come in with check, and, he'll get some attacking chances. But I just said, you know what, I'm going to keep it simple, make sure my pieces are active in my defense. So I played bishop d5, which pins the knight to the queen and defends e6 a little bit more. He gets his queen off of there. I play queen d7. Again, very important. Use every piece, okay? You want to make it simple. You have an extra piece, use it, okay? I have this rook here sitting on a8. I can't tell you how many times I see kids who are up in material not develop their queen side. So I play queen d7 with the idea of getting this rook over. He plays knight e3. I just retreat my bishop because I don't want him. I know I said I like trades, but let's say I don't know. Let's say I play a move like this. I don't really want him taking this knight and opening up the e file and weakening this pawn. So even though I'd probably be okay there, I just said bishop to b7. He goes c4 to try to I don't know, grab more space and maybe play d5. But remember, this was a blitz game, so there are mistakes in this. But this hangs this pawn. I take on d4. He plays queen to b3. Like I said, I'm happy to trade. Trades are your friend when you're ahead of material, so I played bishop takes e3, rook takes. Now I start working my knight to a better position. He plays f3, trying to open up more lines on my king. But I had, this nice little resource here. I play pawn to g3, and because my rook on h8 is active, he actually can't take my pawn, right? If he were to take this, this would be a disaster. He would just be hanging this rook. So he had to play h3, but now my pawn sort of camps out near his king as an attacking piece, as we're going to see later on in this game. I played knight e5, bringing my knight to a good square. Bishop b1 from him, just trying to keep pieces on the board to attack my king later. Queen to c6, threatening this c4 pawn. He could defend it with rook c3, but he chose to try to sacrifice for activity. So he played rook takes e5. But I think we're just seeing he's just running out of material. At this point, I am just up a whole rook and maybe even some extra pawns too, or an extra pawn. It's just too big a disadvantage for him to overcome. He played c5, trying, I guess, to open lines. But now I can actually just start going on the offensive with my extra material. So I played queen takes c5. He played king e2, trying to activate this rook. But like I said, now it's my turn now. Bishop to a6 check, king to d2. Now I can activate that rook I was talking about. Rook a to d8 check, king back to f2, and now I actually have checkmate in one. So this is meant to be like a beginner kind of intermediate video. So give yourself 3 seconds to find it. Okay, so yeah, checkmate in one, queen to f2 mate, right? This was a blitz game. It wasn't like the best game or anything like that, but I think that it just really, really highlights how a material advantage can be more important than other factors in the position a lot of times, right? White had pretty good development in this game. My king wasn't the absolute safest, right? I would have liked it to be safer. Even here, it doesn't look, like the greatest shape, but the material advantage was just too big to overcome. White did not have enough compensation, and that's what decided this game. Okay? All right, so Coach Logan here. I will see you guys next video.